Good morning to most of you, almost afternoon for the East Coasters out there. Thanks for joining us today for our reuse webinar. If you scan the QR code here, you can download the playbook or the website is on the bottom if you want to read along as we go through this webinar. For anyone new to the Green Sports Alliance, we're a membership-driven organization who aims to convene sports, entertainment, and solutions partners to help the industry become more sustainable. If you're looking to learn more and connect, you can email me. My name's Katie. I'm the manager of events and operations. My email is katie@greensportsalliance.org. A few updates on the Alliance. We will have our Green Sports Day Impact Report coming out shortly. So thank you for everyone who participated and helped spread the message of climate action is a team sport. And we have great news. We are going to be announcing our summit location at the end of next month, so at the end of November. In other news, the Green Sports Alliance is now hosting 2 symposiums. We had one in Kansas City. It was all about our energy decarbonization playbook, and we are going to host another one in either late February or early March. And you guessed it, it's all on reuse. The location will be announced early December, and we hope to see you there. You can subscribe to our newsletter for announcements. This is when our calls to speakers goes out for the summit and symposium related things, as well as sponsorship, exhibitor, everything else. And as a reminder, throughout the webinar, you can ask questions in the question and answer box. We'll be sure to get to them at the end. And some of you may know him. He's the expert on our team on reuse. Michael Kraus is going to introduce you to the importance of reuse and how sports can and has taken a role in this momentum.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. I'm very excited about this webinar. So I'll get out of the way pretty quick and let Brittany, Crystal, Nelson really get into it with us. But with Green Sports Alliance, as Katie said, when we think about these members, when we think about our mission and our vision and what we're trying to do, we're trying to leverage the power of sports for change beyond just the lines of the field. And so reuse, and when we talk about waste in general, has a big role in that. And so, Katie, if you actually go to the next slide, I'm going to jump in with the importance of reuse. We did a kind of a steady estimation last year, and based on the fact that there's 350 million fans that attend sports and entertainment venues every year for a major event, and this doesn't include anything under D1 actually. So these are just big events. Um, there are 3 billion interactions fans have with single-use items every year. So when we think about reuse, what we're trying to do is replace those 3 billion interactions with a reuse away from single use. If you'll keep going, Katie. And how is it going so far? The last 2 years have been very big years for reuse in our world. You'll hear from Brittany today talking about the Moda Center, but they became the first venue to really launch reuse with really a pilot starting in 2022. You'll hear about that and more exciting updates coming today. At the same time, Live Nation of the last several years has scaled up their festivals and concerts. CPKC Stadium, where we had our symposium last month, when they opened the stadium, they didn't even consider single use. They went straight to the reuse on the cups. And then LA Memorial Coliseum, you'll hear maybe a little bit about that today, but they recently launched last year, I guess, at the beginning of their football season with reuse. And then you'll hear from Nelson today talking about all things AEG. And some of these numbers may be wrong. These numbers were released with our playbook, but hopefully they're growing. So we're seeing a lot of shift, a lot of change within the reuse movement. Why are we a part of this discussion outside of the cultural influence? One, and this actually comes from Crystal. So hopefully I'm not stealing your thunder here, Crystal, but this is really important for us and why we want to set up and frame this conversation. That when sports and entertainment venues adopt reuse, they become anchor clients. And that can be very important for the entire community. When a sports and entertainment venue does it, it opens up the possibility for folks with less volume to join the reuse program versus having to start it from scratch. And then we'll keep going. Just some great photos. We can enjoy those later. And then two terms that you'll hear during this that we just wanted to share before we launched into this, the importance of the return rate, right? I think it's intuitive to say that the higher the return rate, the better. But as you can see from this graph, it kind of gets into what a return rate means. Um, if you have a 90% return rate, obviously that means 1 in 10 cups is getting lost every time. And so we want to inch that up further and further and further, 95%, 1 in 20 cups. And then as you get further up that. So we want to continue to push this metric. And as you're studying, as you're judging the success of reuse programs, this is very important. And then I think my last slide here is we talk about not just the environmental impacts, but the economic impacts, right? So this is a huge discussion when you have that conversation with the concessionaire, when you're trying to launch it in the venue, it is not just the environmental break-even point. Yes, we want to talk about that all day. That's what we care about a lot. And that's the amount of uses a reusable product has to be washed and used again. So it out performs from an environmental metric its single-use counterpart. And then the economic break-even point, same thing. How many uses does it take to match and then surpass the economic benefits of a single-use item? So you'll hear some of that today. Oh, I forgot I had this one. And this is the just some of the environmental and social benefits. We're talking about reducing waste generation, of course, conservation of resource, reduce fossil fuels, talking about greenhouse gas emissions, the impacts on wildlife. If you have the chance to download the Reuse Playbook, we go into how to actually launch a program. We talk about the sponsorship opportunities and the economic impacts of reuse. So we do a lot more in this playbook. Just want to give a teaser of some of the things in it, but I would like to transition quickly, get out of the way, let the experts in the room, and have a really good discussion. And I would also encourage you all, once again, Katie mentioned this, but if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A. We'll try to be answering those now during the session, and then at the end, we'll open up time. So without further ado, I'll introduce Crystal Dreisbach, CEO of Upstream, Brittany Saulsbury, the Sustainability Operations Manager, Portland Trailblazers over at the Moda Center, and then Nelson Ventress, Sustainability Program Manager of AEG at LA Live. Crystal, I'll let you take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Michael. Glad to be here. Again, I'm Crystal Dreisbach from Upstream. Just a note to the GSA staff, I'm not seeing any slides. So I think others are seeing them, but I'm not for some reason. Can't see any slides.
And
I can see them from my end. We are on your slide with your three bubbles right now, but we
Okay,
can try
great.
to solve that
Yeah,
on
I
our end.
can let you know when to change slides, even though I can't see them. So I'll be moderating a great conversation with Brittany and Nelson today, so we can really dig into their experiences at their venues. I'm just going to first give you a few minutes, 6 minutes or so, of some background on reuse, what we mean by that, why it's important, and some of the movement's challenges. Um, Here is the Upstream three-pillar approach to accelerating reuse, which is what we want to do. We want to get to a tipping point where reuse becomes the default and the norm in our society. So a primary goal we have is achieving widespread, shared, interoperable infrastructure for reuse. And our theory of change is really that sports and entertainment venues have a huge role to play in that. So Upstream is like a systems orchestrator for the movement. And how do we do that? We demonstrate large-scale reuse in sectors like national parks, K through 12 school systems, where we can influence the normalization of reuse in those demographics. We disrupt tactical barriers to scaling reuse, like working to solve funding conundrums, and we work really hard to ensure that robust policy and regulations level the playing field for reuse. So next slide should be a map. Reuse service for food, beverage, and consumer goods is a burgeoning and in-demand new industry that it's not going anywhere. There's 30 wash hubs that exist across North America and growing. Next slide. So what is reuse service? Reuse services provide the logistics, technology, infrastructure for collection, washing, recirculation of reusable packaging. That's pick up, wash, and deliver. So these photos are from 3 of the many reuse service provider companies. Wash facilities are permitted and inspected by their local health departments and follow state food code, just like restaurant kitchens do. And keep in mind that environmental payoffs of reusables increase significantly over time, even when accounting for the water and energy used in washing. Okay, next slide. It should be the challenges. Yep. Okay. Reuse is a significant systemic change to the way our society operates. So naturally, there are a lot of challenges. So I just want to go down quickly these challenges. These are, we recognize there's a lot to work through, and Upstream is actively working on breaking down these barriers. So first, reuse is not just a swap out of a wrapper or a cup or a plate. It's a system. And that system is made possible with wash facilities, logistics, and a workforce, and those things are expensive to build. The reuse industry is much like the solar industry. It requires a large upfront investment before you can see the payoffs. And reuse service providers need to make their potential customers feel confident, and city governments need data and support to shift policy and budget priorities to enable reuse. So reuse is proving itself, but the path to do so is a conundrum. To reach the economies of scale that get us to the environmental payoffs and to make the financial numbers work, you need a lot of volume. But the ability to get that volume and the capacity to process that volume can be hard to achieve when the industry confidence isn't fully there yet. Next, in most cases, compostable products are an example of well-intended and misguided choice on the part of many corporations and institutions. And we understand the huge appeal. It's certainly easier to switch from one type of single use to another rather than make a systems level change. And lastly, life cycle analyses, they all produce different calculations based on the assumptions and methodologies they choose, and they just don't capture the whole picture when it comes to reusable materials in a system. So this is not the most helpful tool if you want to make decisions that really balance maximizing material health, minimizing external impacts of various materials like social impacts or external costs to cities, and maintain practicality in cost and operation. Leading voices in the reuse movement do not want to see plastic as an option for any reuse future out of concerns for pollution and health, while others recognize that plastic can be a pragmatic stepping stone to an eventual plastic-free future. Okay, now on to stadiums. Next slide. Evidence in the movement is showing strongly that sports and entertainment venues have the necessary high volume that we're talking about and the closed loop settings to get us those high return rates that Michael was mentioning. They are, of course, return rates, what drive environmental and economic impacts. And the more lives that those reusable packaging gets to live, the higher the cost savings and environmental payoffs. So next slide. You saw this a little bit earlier, but I want to point out that for reuse service providers, these large closed loop venues are large anchor contracts for them. It's enough for them to come to a city, start up, and grow their capacity. And once that anchor venue, like let's say a football stadium, goes reusable, now all the other sectors in that city have access to going reusable too. Restaurants, grocery stores, local producers, hospitals, and schools pick up, wash, and deliver. So next. This is something I think we don't talk about enough, that instead of ordering disposable items from far away, you're putting people to work locally. It makes safe, clean, entry-level jobs available to underemployed populations, like people on the autism spectrum, people who are systemically challenged to employment, like formerly incarcerated people, veterans. And these jobs can be transporting, washing, packing, redistribution, managing, supervising. And for all these reasons and more, reuse is also a crucial part of the just transition. So lastly, I hope you'll dive into the resources on our website and the community of practice we host called the RSN. And I hope you'll meaningfully consider how reuse can be part of the future of your company or your city. Upstream supports by having model policies available, implementation guidance, best practices, and software that creates decision dashboards for cities and corporations and stadiums to provide them with the confidence that they're making a great investment. So thanks for listening. I get really passionate about this stuff. I am so excited now to hear, for us all to hear from Brittany and Nelson. Again, Brittany is from the Moda Center in Portland, Oregon, home of the Portland Trailblazers. And she has a few slides to tell us about. We'll also then hear from Nelson, and then we'll jump into some questions. Go ahead, Brittany.
Thank you, Crystal. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Saulsbury. I'm the Sustainability Operations Manager for the Portland Trailblazers. I'm also the odd one out here without a green background, was having some technical difficulties there. But I'm going to be talking about our Rip City Reuse program. I actually only have one slide here, but going to be talking just generally about the program, how it all started. So Rip City Reuse is a full venue reuse program at Moda Center. It actually started as a pilot program in our 2022 to 2023 season, where we implemented reuse in basically a smaller location within the arena that was just less volume, so we could really pilot and see how this would work. And that was really to get stakeholder buy-in. There was, some concerns from some of our stakeholders that it was going to be difficult, more costly, it was going to cause more labor, and it was going to interrupt their processes in how they currently run things, or did run things with single-use items. But that pilot really instilled confidence in those groups that we actually could do this. So kind of taking that first step to say, like, let's actually try this, and if we fail, that's okay, but let's see what happens and let's take lessons learned from that. And that pilot did instill a ton of confidence in our groups, including like our food and beverage team, as well as our environmental services team that collects the cups at the end of the night, and really showed them that it's actually not that different from single use. It's just a different vessel that they're receiving in the concession stands. And then at the end of the night, it's just an additional stream that we have to make sure keeps separated from recycling and compost streams. And our venue was already doing a post-event waste sort, so it was just a small thing we needed to add into the sort for that crew to make sure they're looking out for reuse items that may have, ended up in the wrong stream, like someone threw them in the recycling stream or the landfill stream. So we did that pilot in 2022 and 2023 for the whole season. So we got a lot of good data from that. And with that, we decided to, go full venue the following season, this last year. And it has been super successful. We're really excited about it. So we changed every single alcohol cup in the arena to a reusable cup. So that included a 9-ounce cup option for wine, a 12-ounce cup option for cocktails, and a 20-ounce option for draft beer. So that is the automatic cup the customer is given when they order their drink. They don't have any choice in it. That's just what we're providing to them. And we do not have a fee right now that is attached to that cup. Being kind of the first program, the idea was we didn't really want to put the onus on the consumer to have to pay for that reusable cup. We as a business want to make sure we're providing sustainable options to our fans. If anything, we should be putting a charge on single-use items that have a much higher environmental cost downstream. So we don't have a deposit system with the cups. It's just what the consumer is given, and we have messaging throughout the arena. We work with our point of sale staff to encourage our fans to return the cups once they're done. And the program has had a huge impact over the past year. So we actually just hit a major milestone, and we've eliminated 500,000 single-use cups from our waste stream since we launched the program last October. So that's very exciting. And that equates to about 25,000 pounds of waste that was eliminated from our landfill stream. And our current return rate as of this month is 89%, which is amazing because we're seeing improvement in our return rate, specifically on our larger cup size, whereas our average return rate for the season, which went October through April this last year, was about 73% across 75 events. So we're seeing kind of the novelty of the program wear off, and that the biggest loss we were seeing from our cups was fans taking them home, which would be one thing if you are thinking about a reuse program. We did put our kind of Rip City logo on these cups because we branded the program as Rip City Reuse, but I think that made the cups desirable in customers wanting to take them home. So just a tip, if you're thinking about a reuse program, to, design the cups in a way that they're not desirable for people to take home, and the fans will return them. But we are seeing that novelty wear off, and we're seeing improvements in our return rates, which is a great sign. And we're actually going to be launching soda cups into the Rip City Reuse program this season. So now all of the cups in the arena will be reusable. As soon as those come in, we'll be launching them this season. So we're really excited about that. And the other thing I just want to highlight about this program and give a shout out to Jocelyn at Bold Reuse is how we've been able to work with a local business, Bold Reuse. And I think Crystal brought this up, but I don't think this gets talked about enough, is that we're supporting jobs in our local community through this program, which is awesome. Bold Reuse's Wash Hub is just 2 miles away from Moda Center too. So it also means that transit for the cups in transporting them from Moda Center to Bold is super minimal. And they've been an amazing partner to us, and we're looking forward to continuing to work with them.
So great, Brittany. The Moda Center in the reuse movement represents a real early adopter and success story that is going to help us get to the tipping point faster. So I think we all appreciate, how quick and smoothly that you all were able to incorporate this into your permanent operations. So next we'll hear from Nelson. And Nelson, tell us about you. Tell us about what's going on right now at AEG and your venues. And then once we hear from Nelson, I've got some burning questions for you, and I know the audience does too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Crystal. And first and foremost, I want to say a huge shout out to Brittany and the Moda Center for really setting the standard for arenas. I know when we heard that they were going to go with the reusable cup, everybody in our office went, dang, they beat us to the punch. So really great to see other people taking the first step and really having great success with it. So with that, I want to talk about how we at AEG are using reuse. We do have a history of reuse, a recent history with using our cup specifically. So our cup, I think, was mentioned earlier as one of the reuse manufacturers. So we've been working with them since 2022 by introducing them to our smaller music venues that we have in the Denver and Seattle music markets. You'll see those venues on the left there. And they were really our testing ground on seeing how guests behave with using reusable cup programs and using different models on what works best from a fan behavior standpoint, on a waste management standpoint. So how we're collecting the cups, how guests are paying for the cups, and really using that as our way to pilot different programs. And from there, we found that the guests are really interested in reuse, and they find that it's a great experience, and they really attach to the environmental aspect of the program. They like being a able participant in not creating single-use waste. So from there, we expanded to 2 different markets. We went up to San Francisco, and we started a program here in downtown LA at a small music venue called The Novo that we have here on site at LA Live. And we started introducing them to our festivals. So seeing how our festival fans interact with the cup that they don't throw away. And we found a lot of success on our non-desert festivals. And we use the same kind of idea, use these smaller festivals as our way to work from the ground up and see if we can start scaling it up to bigger music festivals like Coachella and Stagecoach. And that brings us up to now, where we have introduced the ARCA program to both Crypto.com Arena and Peacock Theater. And we actually started those programs in September for Peacock Theater. And I don't know if anybody saw the Emmys a few months ago, but there was a really great picture with Martin Short and Meryl Streep where they were holding a cup. So really, trying to push this out as much as we can to our bigger venues. And we're finding a lot of success. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. So introducing it to Crypto.com Arena was something that we really wanted to do. Looking at our smaller venues, we were trying to find a good reason for us to start implementing it into a venue larger than 20,000 seats. And we got very lucky that Depeche Mode had Reuse as part of their green rider. So we saw that those shows were on the calendar. We talked to their team, and as part of that rider, it said we would prefer for you to have a reusable cup option in the arena while we play these two shows. So we looked at our partners at RCup and said, can we do this? And we got it done. So they played in December, and we really reached out to them and had the RCup team come out on site. They trained every single staff member, from the bar staff to guest services to security to the janitorial staff. And we really tried to knock it out of the park. And the results of those two shows really showed us that, one, we're able to do this in a building this large. Two, our guests really enjoy having a mission of reducing single use. And three, that we're able to collect as many cups as possible. So we actually had a 96% harvest rate for those cups for those two shows. Over 26,000 cups were sorted out of the waste streams, and they were collected in both bins, reuse bins located all throughout the concourses. And we also found that a lot of the fans were leaving them in their seats, which made our post-event sort very, very easy. So we were able to collect on two ways, both the guests tossing it in a specific bin and our janitorial staff collecting them out of the seats. And then on the back end, we already do a post-event sort similar to what Moda Center does. And we were able to collect a little bit of cups from other streams as well. As we know, guests can overconsume. And once they get to that second or third drink, they forget where they drop things. So some cups do end up in different streams, waste or recycling, but our sorting team was able to capture those. And we can move on to the next slide. So we used that show as our launching point and really asked ourselves, how can we make this a full-time program? And we reached out to a few of our partners and our sponsorship team and said, what can we do to make this work? And lucky for us, we had a really great partner in Coca-Cola who was really trying to push sustainability as part of our partnership. And they agreed that this is something that not only we as a venue want to do, but them as a company really want to support. And they helped us finance some of this program. And they were already working with us to change all of our waste bins. As you can see, these are brand new waste bins that are in the arena. And they helped support the reuse side of this partnership. They even agreed to take their logos off of the cups to ensure that they don't get taken home. So really trying to leverage these partnerships that we have to encourage these programs has really pushed this forward. And we were able to get a lot of support from our leadership team. So from the top down, we were asking ourselves, how can we do this? Is this 96% going to be sustainable? And we just looked at the results of those Depeche Mode shows and we said, yes, we can sustain this. We have the support of our partners, and we got a little financial support as well to help push the program fund the wash hub nearby, and really get this program off the ground. So we just started to do this year. As I mentioned, September is when we launched it, both at Peacock Theater and at the arena. So we're looking at the early results now. We won't really know our return rate for quite some time. We have a very busy calendar, so it's hard for us to take cups out of the building to count how many we've used. But once we get those results, we'll be sure to share with you all. But happy to answer any questions that anybody has. I know I didn't really get into the nitty gritty just because I know that you all have a lot of questions. But yes, this program has really been a long time coming for us at AEG, and really scaling up to working at Crypto.com Arena has been something that we've been trying to do since our initial work with ARCUP in 2022. So we're glad to see it finally get off the ground.
Thank you so much, Nelson. This is really exciting. Huge deal that so many LA venues are going reusable. I'm really excited to see that. I just have a few burning questions, and then we're going to go to the very burning questions of the audience as well. But I think what I often hear in terms of questions about reuse in stadiums is, it's kind of a high concept long game to play. You got to buy into a cup or a service that costs more, trusting that payoffs are going to come and that fans are going to like it and all of that. What were some of the key decisions, maybe Brittany first, key financial decisions or the supporting factors? Nelson mentioned a sponsorship that really helped, that made Moda sign on the dotted line. Tell us about the financial aspect.
Yeah, so I think there was a few aspects here. One being we've been facing changes to our local waste regulations here in Portland. So that's something that I think helped really push this forward, because with reuse, it's not going to actually be affected by that, because we're reusing items. We're not putting items into the waste stream that have to be composted or recycled. And that's one of the things I love about reuse. I think people think it makes things more complex, but it actually makes things simpler, because there's venues all across the country, and every single one has different local regulations around their waste and what they can even achieve with what they have available. Whereas reuse is the same everywhere. If you can get a wash hub set up, which is relatively easy compared to, something like getting a commercial composting facility in your city, if you don't have one, then you're really set to go and can decrease that single-use waste without having to jump through different hoops and depending on what you have available. So that was a big thing for us. It was kind of future-proofing and really thinking forward about our waste strategy, and changes that may be coming, and making sure we are future-proofing our strategies around zero waste.
Nelson, can you talk from your perspective?
Oh, you're on mute, Nelson.
Oops, sorry about that. Yeah, sorry, I was answering another one of the questions on the Q&A. But yeah, I actually, can you please repeat the question again?
You mentioned a sponsorship that really helped push this over the line and make it sort of a lower barrier to entry to go reusable. What are some of the other key supporting factors that really made AEG sign on the dotted line?
Oh, well, what came from our leadership. So when we were talking about getting the reuse into crypto and Peacock, we were also talking to the Green Sports Alliance about hosting the summit. And we were talking to ARCUP to support the summit as well. And that just helped push that conversation forward. And our leadership said, look, if we're going to do this, let's just do it. Let's not try to, do it for one event. Let's do it for all of our events. So it really came from a leadership perspective. But financially, I'm not privy to all of the financials. As part of that, it's way above my pay grade. But trying to use the different models that we saw at our festivals and our smaller music venues really helped push that conversation forward to say, what model do we want to use? And we're actually probably not using the same models because it's a much larger scale. So we're still trying to understand what works best for us right now from a financial perspective. But that initial sponsorship really helped get it off the ground. And like I said, Coke has really helped us push this forward and really invested in not only our program, but the reuse industry in Los Angeles. So having that conversation go from how are we going to pay for this, as opposed to how can we leverage our current relationships with our sponsors to help fund this program. But again, I'm not 100% sure about the financial situation of getting that in the building, but I do think that it's fluid right now, and I think that it will change at some point. But right now, we're just trying to see our early results and understand if there's a different financial model that we need to make this more sustainable and more long-lasting, as opposed to just however long our current deal is with our cup.
So much of about reuse is about new operations, and really thinking about fan response. Brittany, how have the concessionaires and the fans reacted? Now you're to this 500,000 cups later. What has the reaction been from all parts of Moda Center?
Yeah, I think on the staff side, it is definitely a point of pride now because we were kind of the first venue to do this and we've done it successfully. So it is a point of pride for our staff. And then on the fan side, we have received a lot of positive feedback. I'm just pulling up some numbers. So about 93% of our guests are satisfied with the overall program. 91% say sustainability programs like Rip City Reuse are very important to their experience at the Rose Quarter. And 88% said it was clear where to return their cup. Love to get that a little bit higher, but that's still very good. So overall, it's been very positive feedback from our fans on the program, which is great to see. I think we are in a market where people are a little more sustainably minded and focused. So we do have a little bit of that advantage there, but overall the response has been great. And I think one thing we've been able to do too is like share these milestones with our fans. Like we just shared the 500,000 milestone with our fans because it's really like possible because of them, right? Like with their help, we were able to do that because we need their participation in order to do that. Mm-hmm. And all of our cups, they have a QR code on them. If you scan them, it takes you to our Rip City Reuse landing page. And the first thing you see on that page is actually a live cup tracker of how many single-use cups we have eliminated since we've started the program.
That's amazing, Brittany. That is so good to hear. Nelson, how about the anticipation with the fans? Or I suppose you're doing some messaging right now to the fans. And what's the reaction been from staff anticipating this program getting off the ground?
Yeah, from our fans, we've been doing it, or we've been announcing the program in our Know Before You Go. So for the last month or so, all we've had are concerts in the arena, and then we had the award shows in the theater as well. But really trying to inform our guests that this is a new program coming in. And from the concert side, we know our guests are really adhering to it. They love the experience. We haven't heard any negative feedback from guests from switching to a reusable cup. But from the concession side, there was a slight concern from the, I would say, the office side of how are we going to tell our frontline staff of how to use these cups? And it really took the training before each event to tell our frontline staff, like, this is no different than a single-use cup. You're pouring it in, your beverage into the cup, you're giving it to the guest. You could inform them that they can return it in a reuse bin. But really, from an operation standpoint, nothing has changed. The only thing that's different is the fact that the guest is now putting it into a different bin at the end of its use during that event. And then we're taking those cups, washing them, and returning them for a future event. So that really helped push that conversation to, well, if our operation isn't really going to change, then why not do it? And I think it's also fun watching the other guest experience pieces from it as well. So informing our security staff, telling them, can you please, as you're watching guests walk out, can you please inform them to return the cups? And our staff had already done that anyway by preventing alcohol from leaving the venues. And now it's just going from alcohol leaving to all cups leaving. And sometimes it does take a guest to have that one person tell them, oh yeah, that's right, I still have this cup. And they will turn around and they will put it into a reuse bin. And they know, they're like, oh yeah, this is not something that I could just take with me. And they don't get angry about it. They don't try to hide it. I feel like they kind of take a sense of pride about it too. They go, oh yeah, I'm doing my part. I'm returning the cup. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, it's been really interesting watching our guests interact with it. But I really also think it's interesting watching the shift in our guest experience teams of how they communicate with guests and how this program is starting to evolve into a more environmentally conscious activity when they're going to an event.
This is great. I love what you said, Nelson, of kind of showing the staff that this is really not that much different. And if we all think about it, reuse is not really a novel concept. I mean, it's washing dishes. And, you know, there's linen services out there that pick up, wash, and deliver. There's cloth diaper services. So this is not a novel concept to return something for use again. And then, Brittany, I love what you said. Well, both of you have said, you know, they're participating. They're part of the reason why you reached 500,000 cups. And, you know, they're doing their part is what you said, Nelson. I just want to say real quick that something we don't talk enough about in reuse is love. So if you have garbage in your hand and you walk to a garbage can to throw it in, I don't know about you, but that doesn't bring me a whole lot of joy. But if you're tossing something into a bin that they are aware that there's a process that's going to happen to that cup and they're a part of a system bigger than themselves, there is well-established research that that is something that can actually increase a person's sense of well-being and increase the love that they feel. So let's not discount love. Real quick, we want to go to audience questions since there's a lot of them. I just want to say maybe lastly, Brittany, could you give maybe what is the top next thing that you want to work on to improve this project going forward, the reuse project? What's one challenge you're tackling next?
Yeah, I mean, I think the rollout of soda cups is really exciting for us because we, you know, have just been doing alcohol cups. So with soda cups, we're excited to get our non-drinking fans and also our younger fans more involved in participating in the program. So some of the things we're hoping to do too is really activate around our younger fans. We have a kids club program where kids can actually earn points for prizes and things like that. So one of the fun things we're going to do is integrate Rip City Reuse into that. So kids can get points when they return their cup. And we're really excited to just, I think now have all of our fans really participate. And also, you know, see how this is going to work because we're actually doing 2 soda cup sizes. We're going to have a 22 ounce and a 32 ounce, which is going to be a lot, but we're excited to see how that goes and to see how our fans respond to it and having multiple options.
That's great. It sounds like more fan engagement and
Yes.
even more things to incentivize return. That's awesome. Yep. Nelson, how about you? What's the next thing that you're working on with this reuse program?
Yeah, so it's very early days, like I mentioned. So the first 2 months by having it in both buildings full time. And I don't know if I mentioned it earlier, but our program is all beverages, all poured beverages. So cocktails, wine, soda, and draft beers. We still do have some bottled beverages and canned beverages, but this is all for poured beverages. The next step for us, I would have to say is foodware. How do we start introducing reusable foodware into the arena? At least that's my dream. Those bins that I showed earlier, we tried to future-proof those as well by understanding the sizes of foodware that our ware actually produces at the moment. So if we do need to switch over to a reusable food boat or pizza tray or whatever it may be, we can actually fit those items in those bins that we already just purchased. So we're trying to prepare for the next step, but we want to take this year to kind of understand how the cup program is doing before we start bringing in the food concept. Let's introduce our fans to one reuse concept at a time, unless it gets to a point where we really need a hot dog tray at a moment's notice, and we could use that as a pilot program. But yeah, that's what we're really looking at right now is the next step.
That's great. Yeah, I think a lot of this is in the early days of reuse. Let's get to really robust models, and then we can expand out from there. All right, this is great. So we have 15 minutes left. Is that right, Katie?
Yeah.
Okay.
Lots of questions here,
Lots
but
of
this is
questions.
great. That means that people are thinking about it. They're curious if they can implement. I'm going to try and sum of these up. Brittany and Nelson, can either of you talk about what the process was like in terms of the relationship with your beverage providers and how that reaction came, or what the process was like?
Yeah, I can talk about Coca-Cola. So I mentioned they're our soda sponsor. They have pouring rights in the arena, and we also have a sponsorship with them across all of LA Live. So they are the beverage provider for the downtown LA venues that we own, and they've really pushed sustainability as a major part of this sponsorship. And it was a really easy conversation for us to have with them. We said, we're looking at this reuse program. We want to have it as part of our sustainability journey at the arena. And they agreed. They said, this is a wonderful program. Well, we would like to support this. And they really helped push this through. Like I mentioned, they funded a large part of the program. They are really influential in pushing the reuse industry here in Los Angeles. So they're a really big part and major part of this program working. So it was a very, very easy conversation to have. And then we also had to talk to our beer provider to make sure that there weren't any issues with the pouring into those cups. We didn't have any exclusivities on the cups with our alcohol vendor. So it was really easy for us to work with them and say, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pour into a reusable cup. And they said, okay, that's fine. That's great. But Coca-Cola was really the big player in this for the success of this program and getting it into the buildings.
Yeah, similar here. We don't have any exclusivities in terms of branding on our alcohol cups, so that made it pretty easy to just do whatever we wanted on the alcohol cups. And then we have been working with Coca-Cola, because we are also a Coca-Cola building, on the switch to reuse for our soda cups specifically, and they have been supportive of that program.
So for everyone out there, it just takes the conversation with your beverage providers. I know Keurig Dr. Pepper is in the same boat. Sounds like Coca-Cola, Pepsi as well. We've had conversations with them. The next question, to sum up, it sounds like a lot of folks have an interest on the materials. So we know plastic is kind of piercing to our ears nowadays. So the big question is, why plastic? Why didn't we decide on stainless steel or any other product that could have been reusable? And kind of what were the benefits in going with the plastic reusables?
Yeah, I can start. I think, I mean, one of the biggest concerns in an arena and in a venue is safety. So we always have to think about things and the potential of them being projectiles. So stainless steel is not going to be a great option for us because of safety reasons and security reasons. It is also more expensive than plastic, but the main reason I think is safety and security within a venue, where we do have to think about those things. And then, yes, they are plastic, but I think the important differentiating factor here is that they are not single-use plastic, and that we are also sourcing cups that are high quality plastic, which is polypropylene, number 5, which is the most food safe plastic there is. So making sure we are sourcing good quality plastic, since we do need something that is lightweight and safe for our fans.
Yeah, I'd like to mirror that as well. It really is a safety issue, especially for uh, basketball stadiums like us, or basketball arenas. Just thinking about not only projectiles, but if a guest on the floor leaves it on the floor, it doesn't have a lot of give, so you can have potential for injury if it does end up on the floor. But we also have used some LCAs to see if the different types of materials and how they work from a single use point to a reuse point. And from what we had, which was a number 1 PET single use cup being used once, as opposed to a number 5 polypropylene cup being used multiple times, it comes down to being the more environmentally friendly option. From water, CO2, waste, like there are more benefits to using a polypropylene cup multiple times as opposed to any single use item. And then from the safety side, again, like we would rather use a number 5 plastic as opposed to a metal object, because it would just be too much of a safety issue. So it was a better choice for us to go with number 5 plastic as well.
Beautiful. This might be towards Michael, or you guys might know the answer to this as well. But does every venue who has reuse, is it required to have sorters after each game or concert?
So I don't think it's not required, but I certainly think it is going to help your return rate and the success of the program. When we did a count one night, we wanted to kind of see how many cups were ending up in the wrong bins, and we found that about 10% of the reuse cups were ending up in the wrong bin, so like in a compost or landfill bin instead of the reuse bin. So I really think that post sort is to your benefit, to make sure you are recapturing as all of your inventory that has been returned and hasn't left the building. So I do think it's beneficial. And then also the bowl pick too is a great option. You could encourage fans to leave their cups in the seats. That could make things easier too, because then when you do that bowl pick, you can have a separate pick just to get those cups.
Yeah, I don't think it's a requirement either, but it's highly recommended. And it's something that we already did as a building prior to this program. We were already separating our PET and our aluminum. So it was just another piece that our sorters at the end of the event have to sort through. We are seeing that sorting is the difference maker at a lot of the venues that we have reusables, especially the festivals. So festivals are much different than an arena. It's not a fixed infrastructure. Guests come in 1 day, 2 days, and then leave and don't come back for another year. So there is a higher chance and a higher percentage of cups being lost at those events. So sorting is absolutely necessary to have them. To have that. At smaller music venues, we do have small sorting teams that go through at the end of the show, pick up cups from the floor, cups from the bars. But a lot of those venues only use a reuse bin. So they're not really being found in other waste streams. So in arenas and at Peacock Theater, we have to sort at the end to ensure that we capture as many cups as possible. And again, the post-event bowl pick or seating area pick is the second biggest area where we capture the most cups.
Maybe I'll just chime in real quick that those answers are wonderful and we learn from them more than us. But there is in the actual playbook itself, there's a page dedicated to the role of waste sorting. And I would love to read from it right now, but there's such good questions. I'll pass on it with those answers, but I would encourage you to download the playbook and read more into that.
Yes, and the playbook link is in the chat if you guys want to take a look at it. This one's kind of interesting. So the question is, has any new infrastructure has been necessary at Moda Center or LA Live venues? New infrastructure, yes, wash hubs, but isn't directly connected to the stadiums themselves. But in addition to collection bins, to support the reuse system / fan experience, what kind of other infrastructures have been necessary, like refill stations, beverage dump bins, etc., if there has been any at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh,
Brittany, by all means, go ahead.
Our main infrastructure items have been the reuse bins. And we were very lucky in that we actually already had 4 compartment bins. 2 streams were compost, one was recycling, and one was landfill. And we actually just flipped one of the compost streams to be reuse. And that's actually been really successful for us. We actually figured that out in the pilot too, that when we integrated into our existing bins that fans were used to going to, that return rates went up a lot more. So just what we've learned was when we integrated reuse into our existing bins, return rates went up a lot more because that's where fans are used to going. Other than the bins, I would say there actually hasn't been much we've done other than additional signage, just with reminders to return the cups. But that's really been the main thing, additional signage with just education for our fans.
Yeah, when we switched over to these new bins, we really had to have a conversation about how many reuse lids do we need. So all of the bins that we brought into the building have a removable lid, so we're able to change streams if we want to. And those 2 Depeche Mode shows showed us that we needed reuse options. So we put a reuse bin next to every single trash can that we had in the building. And our operations team noticed that and saw that actually a lot more cups were left in the seating bowl than in those reuse bins, but not many cups were finding their way into the trash and recycling. A small percentage was, but not many. So when we went and did this big rehaul of our waste bins, we introduced reuse lids into every area where there is a beverage point of sale, and also in areas where there are concession stands, just to encourage that if this is where you're purchasing a beverage, this is where you're also dropping off the cup. And putting signage on our digital media around the building as well, just to encourage guests to put them in to a reuse bin has been somewhat helpful as well. But yeah, really providing the education on the bins and providing an option for the guests to dispose of it has been a big piece of this as well.
So just want to give a shout out to Bold Reuse and Our World on this Q&A box. You are helping me out tremendously. And I put both of their website addresses in the chat if you guys want to get a hold of them. They are experts on this. A lot of the questions are about funding and what is an ROI, if any. There are a ton of different reuse companies out there that will help you out in terms of getting those numbers. So if you do work at a stadium, I encourage you to reach out and just get a quote, see how feasible it actually is if there's wash hubs in your location. I know based off of experience in Kansas City, CPKC, the home of the Kansas City Current, they they said we're going to do reuse. There's not going to be any plastic when they first built the stadium. And that really encouraged the other KC teams to start to get involved. And then their partner is building a wash up there. So it's kind of like a domino effect. And as we're seeing, I think if we would have done this webinar a year and a half ago, we wouldn't have had nearly as much traction as we have right now. So we're here for a resource. I put Crystal's email in the chat as well if you have questions for her. She's also an expert. And there was a few questions on here about universities. So if you remember at the beginning of the presentation, the LA Coliseum, which is where USC plays in Southern California, they have implemented reuse. And it sounds like Bold is doing a few other projects with other universities as well. So if you're a university and you want to get on board, email us, email Michael or myself. I put his email in the chat as well. If anyone has any burning desires, you can raise your hand right now. That's a possibility. And we can give you an answer live. But if not, I just want to thank all of our panelists. You guys have been so excellent. This has been the most attendees and the most questions that we've had on a webinar in quite some time. So really excited to see the momentum keep going. Look forward to, or keep a lookout for the reuse symposium that's coming up. We'd love to see all of you guys in person. And I'm sure we'll see Brittany, Nelson, and Crystal there as well. And you can ask them in person. Any last words, panelists?
Thank you for joining.
Oh, we do have a raised hand here real quick. If one of y'all can stay on. Let's see. We have Rachel Bella. Rachel, you're live if you want.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi, everyone. I was thinking of not asking because I have a lost voice, but I was like, whatever, let's try. Excuse me for my squeakiness. I'm in our company, Oland Stations, is in the Reuse Playbook, and I believe we're one of like the only water refilling stations, and everything, all the other solutions in the Reuse are about cups. So I was just wondering, like, is there a missing gap to kind of get stronger together on like the water refilling aspect, and how like reuse can't happen if we don't know things are being refilled? So it's not really a question. I will, or if you guys know of any like really strong case studies of how cups and refill stations have been partnering together, you could reach out to us because I know we're at time. We're curious.
And Rachel, I would love to for you to reach out to me, or for me to reach out to you. Upstream is working in Grand Canyon National Park. We just launched to create a reuse ecosystem for the whole park's South Rim section. And
Cool.
one of the things we want to do is work with Rethink Disposable and others, anyone to think through the water refill stations as well. So maybe we can talk about that.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks, guys. That's awesome to know. A good place to start.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks all. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks,
Hopefully you
Rachel.
don't like me.
All right. Thanks again, everyone. And we hope to see you in February, March.
Thank you, Brittany, Nelson, Crystal. Good job.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.